We're in Hong Kong at the Convention Center 2 days before the watch auction, and I have Aurel Bacs, who is the International Head of Watches, to come speak with us today about collecting and to really give you some insider information about watches and how to approach collecting. So the first thing I wanted to ask you, Aurel, is what was your first watch as a boy?
Well, there's always the first one, right? But not what you would expect. In fact, it was in the 1970s when I was a probably 6-year-old boy, and it was one of those Japanese digital quartz watches that would have a calculator on it. So not quite what we're doing today.
Do you still have it?
I regret not. I would be very keen to have it again, but I must have lost it somewhere.
Patek Philippe and Rolex are real blue chip brands, and people, I think, want to know, how did these companies get to have this cachet in the market?
I think the word blue chip, like you chose that word, comes from the stock markets, and a blue chip is something that is there forever and ever, that is for generations a solid, well-known value. So probably blue chip has to do with consistency, never to disappoint the markets, probably not to experiment too much with products, but to deliver constantly solid, good products at a reasonable or intelligent price. And there are some brands that do that now for over 100 years.
What does a brand have to do to gain that position?
There are many that are already blue chips, but one doesn't think of them within the first 5 seconds. To me, blue chips are not only Vacheron Constantin in Geneva, but also Audemars Piguet of Le Brassus. Breguet and Cartier are fantastic names that have an incredibly long legacy, and their products still today reflect the original ideas and designs of their creators. But also Lang & Söhne in Germany is one of those brands that is true to their history. They have a clearly defined DNA, and their products today hold up to the promises that are given to the collectors.
For you, what is one of the most underrated brands?
Well, I would say at the, and I'm not talking vintage watches, I think that there are plenty of fantastic brands that you can pick up in the low thousands of dollars, starting with Omega, continuing with IWC, also Jaeger-LeCoultre. These are great names that have massively contributed to the development of the wristwatch in the 20th century. And for a couple of $1,000s, you find superb, great, everyday watches with history, with cachet, with looks, with extra functions. So clearly there I would have a closer look at. I also like in the 10,000 plus price brackets, for example, Vacheron Constantin and Audemars Piguet. They are, in terms of numbers, rarer than Patek Philippe. They have their very clearly definable identity, so they don't look like Patek Philippe. They have their different appearance and DNA. And in quality, no difference that should give them a handicap ×2, ×3 that we see in today's market.
We've seen a lot of record breakers in the watch auction market lately. So what does this mean for buyers who are putting their money in at high prices? What will this mean down the road if they want to sell?
It's mostly the headlines that novice, outside, newcoming collectors read. They hear that we sold a unique Breguet pocket watch for over $4 million. They read that in every Christie's auction there's a Patek Philippe making $2 or $3 million. And I understand that if this is even maybe intimidating and discouraging for newcomers to join our collecting field, because they think that it's a billionaire's game and the market is completely blown up. This is not true. These are headlines with 1, 2, 3 watches per auction or per season. The truth is that, in my view, there is fantastic potential for value growth, hence my introduction before to what I think is underrated. And I believe that also in those top brands, there are individual models which one should look closely that can just be as rare and as beautiful as the record-breaking model, but maybe because of the size, they're less popular because we've had a trend since the millennium for large size watches. but also models with less important functions that are as beautiful and as rare as ultra complicated wristwatches.
Men's watches are the drivers in the marketplace and the most popular. Do you think women's complications will ever be as valued as men's?
I love the question for a specific reason, because ladies are to me the half of the planet that Christie's watch department hasn't yet conquered. The truth is that ladies' watches have always been beautiful and have never been really cheaper than men's watches in terms of the production process, because to make a small 5, 6, 7 line mechanical movement is even more costly than to make a 10 to 14 line mechanical men's size wristwatch. So this is, to begin with, an interesting observation. Then I think it's just that ladies are not yet as fascinated as men with the mechanics. And I think it's just a matter of the ladies discovering the split-second chronographs, the tourbillons, the minute repeaters, and hopefully one day 50% of our bidders in the sale room will be lady bidders.
For someone looking to invest, why would it be better to put your money in watches rather than art or wine or cars?
Well, the perfect Christie's answer would be collect them all. But I think it's, first of all, a personal choice, because I have watch collectors who are ready to spend $1 million on a watch, and they ask me, how come that you have clients paying for a piece of contemporary art $1 million? Now, it is more often the other way around, where the contemporary art collector doesn't understand why a watch can be $1 million. The truth is that, first of all, you need to be interested and understand it and enjoy it, and then you're making the parallels and the comparisons. However, at the end of the day, there is no pro and contra for one field or another. It has to fit your personal passion, and I believe watches is actually one of the most promising markets for the future.
In general terms, what is the relationship between retail prices and auction estimates?
Anything that Christie's offers, the auction estimate is a conservative guideline to potential bidders. Meaning, if I think that an object should fetch $10,000, by no way I can propose it with an auction estimate of $12,000 to $16,000. It would be discouraging and would not attract any bidders. So the $10,000 watch should ideally be estimated either $7,000 to $10,000, maybe $8,000 to $12,000, but always a touch conservative to really get the market interested. At the end of the day, there is also the buyer's premium, the commission that any buyer is paying to Christie's, and this is part of the overall value. So I cannot expect people to pay retail price and on top of that a commission to Christie's. So there's multiple reasons why we start lower and why also the result will be lower than retail price, because of the reasons I just mentioned.
Asia and China have been very strong markets in the watch world. Who do you see as developing next?
We see growth coming from the Middle East. I believe the entire Middle Eastern market is not as we thought it is for decades, that it's more or less about heavily diamond encrusted watches. There's an extremely sophisticated clientele looking for grand complications and complex mechanical watches. We see fantastic interest growing in South America and Central America. The last 2 years, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina have been very surprising in the positive sense in terms of participation at Christie's auctions. I believe all the former Soviet states, today Ukraine, Russia, have been more than exciting to us. So I think pretty much anywhere on the planet I see the discovery for fine mechanical timepieces helping our cause and making the community of collectors greater.